Before I read this, I want to invite you to take a moment to just open your mind and really expand the bandwidth of how much mental information you can receive. Just take a moment to consider that you can actually increase how much wisdom, how much light you can receive through your mind at any time. Let me take a few deep breaths, and we let our field open to receive. Emerald Tablet 4, the Spaceborn. Listen close, O soul, to the voice of wisdom. Listen to the voice of Thoth the Atlantean. Freely I give to you of my wisdom, gathered from the time and space of this cycle, master of mysteries, son of the morning, Thoth, the teacher of humanity, is of all. But long time ago, when I was a child, I lay beneath the stars on long-buried Atlantis, dreamed of mysteries far above mankind. Then in my heart there grew a great longing to conquer the pathway that led to the stars. Year after year I sought after wisdom, seeking new knowledge, following the way, until at last my soul, in great travail, broke from its bondage and bounded away. I was free from the bondage of earth folk. Free from my body, I flashed through the night. Unlocked at last for me was the star space. Free was I from the bondage of night. Now to the end of space I sought wisdom, far beyond knowledge of finite people. Far into space my soul traveled freely into infinity's circle of light. Strange, beyond knowledge were some of the planets, great and gigantic, beyond dreams of mankind. Yet I found the law in all of its beauty, working through and among them as here among men. My soul flashed forth through infinity's beauty. Far through space I flew with my thoughts. There I rested on a planet of beauty. Strains of harmony filled all the air. Shapes there were, moving in order, great and majestic as stars in the night, mounting in harmony, ordered equilibrium, symbols of the cosmic, like unto the law. Many the stars I passed in my journey, many the races of mankind on their worlds, some reaching high as stars of the morning, some falling low in the blackness of night. Each and all of them struggling upward, gaining the heights and pluming the depths, moving at times in realms of brightness, living through darkness, gaining the light. Know now, O soul, that light is your heritage. Know that darkness is only a veil. Sealed in your heart is brightness eternal, waiting for the moment of freedom to conquer, waiting to rend the veil of the night. Some I found who had conquered the ether, who had become free of space while they were still people. Using the force that is the foundation of all things, far in space they constructed a planet, drawn by the force that flows through the all, condensing, coalescing the ether into forms that grew as they willed, outstripping in science, they, all of the races, mighty in wisdom, children of the stars. For a long time I paused, watching their wisdom. I saw them create from out of the ether cities gigantic of rose and of gold. From the primal elements they formed the base of all matter, the ether far flung. Far in the past they had conquered the ether, freed themselves from the bondage of toil, formed in their mind only a picture, and swiftly created, it grew. Forth then my soul sped throughout the cosmos, seeing ever new things and old, learning that humanity is truly spaceborn, a son of the sun, a child of the stars. Know now, O soul, that whatever form you inhabit, surely it is one with the stars. Your body is nothing but a planet revolving around a central sun. When you have gained the light of all wisdom, you shall be free to shine in the ether. One of the suns that light outer darkness, one of the spaceborn, grown into light. Just as the stars in time lose their brilliance, light passes from them into the great source. So too shall your soul pass onward, leaving behind the darkness of night. You formed forth from the primal ether, filled with the brilliance that flows from the source. Bound by the ether, coalesced around, yet ever it flames until at last it is free. Lift up your flame from out of the darkness, fly from the night, and you shall be free. I traveled through space-time, knowing my soul, at last was set free, knowing that now I might pursue wisdom, until at last I passed to a plane hidden from knowledge, not known to wisdom, an extension beyond all that we know. Now, O soul, when I had this knowing, my soul grew happy, for now I was free. Listen, O spaceborn, listen to my wisdom. Know that you too will be free. Listen again, O soul, to my wisdom, that hearing you too might live and be free. Not of the earth are you, earthy, but yet a child of infinite cosmic light. Now to you I give of my knowledge freedom to walk in the path I have trod, showing you truly how by my own striving I walked the path that leads to the stars. Listen, O soul, and know of your bondage. Know how to free yourself from the toils. Out of the darkness shall you rise upward, one with the light and one with the stars. Follow forever the path of wisdom. Only by this can you rise from below. Ever mankind's destiny leads him onward into the curves of infinity's all. Know this, O soul, that all space is ordered. Only by order are you one with the all. Order and balance are the law of the cosmos. Follow, and you shall be one with the all. Those who would follow the pathway of wisdom, you must be open to the flower of life, extending your consciousness out of the darkness, flowing through time and space in the all. Deep in the silence, first you must linger until at last you are free from desire, free from the longing to speak in the silence, conquered by silence, the bondage of words, abstaining from eating until you have conquered desire for food. That is bondage of the soul. Then lie yourself down in the darkness. Close your eyes from the rays of the light. Center your soul force in the place of your consciousness, shaking it free from the bonds of the night. Place in your mind, place the image you desire. Picture the place you desire to see. Vibrate back and forth with your power. Loosen your soul from out of its night. Fiercely you must shake with all of your power until at last your soul shall be free. Mighty beyond words is the flame of the cosmic, hanging in planes unknown to mankind. Mighty and balanced, moving in order, music of harmonies far beyond man. Speaking with music, singing with color, flame from the beginning of eternity's all. Spark of the flame you are, O my children, burning with color and living with music. Listen to the voice and you shall be free. Consciousness free is fused with the cosmic, one with the order and law of the all. You did not know that out of the darkness light shall flame forth, a symbol of all. May you pray this prayer for the attaining of wisdom. Pray for the coming of light to the all. Mighty spirit of light that shines through the cosmos, draw my flame closer in harmony to thee. Lift up my fire from out of the darkness, magnet of fire that is one with the all. Lift up my soul, so mighty and potent. Child of the light, do not turn away. Draw me in power to melt in your furnace, one with all things, and all things in one, fire of the life strain, and one with the brain. When you have freed your soul from its bondage, know that you Know that for you the darkness is gone. Even through space you may seek wisdom, bound not by bindings forged in flesh. Onward and upward and into the morning. Free flash, O soul, to the realms of light. Move now in order, move now in harmony. Freely you shall move with the children of light. Seek and know my key of wisdom. Thus, O soul, you shall surely be free. Thus, O soul, you shall surely be free. You know, I could say that last line better. Amen. There's nothing like a morning cup of jasmine tea. My inner Iroh is coming out. Now, what we just read can be elaborated upon with this. That if we want to transcend anything and everything in our lives, we must strive to do so by connecting with wisdom, by following the path of wisdom. When we just say, oh, the world is the way that it is, and we go about our lives and we get stuck in the pursuits of our day, if they're not connected, if they're not in alignment with that heartfelt pursuit for transcendent wisdom, then we end up just stuck running the rat race, running on the hamster wheel, ongoing, and ongoing. This is how you break free of this. This mystical experience, the ceremony, you can do that if you feel called, is fast for several days until you give up your desire for food, as well as, what was the other one? Oh, silence, that you stay in complete silence in darkness until you no longer want to speak. You give up all of your selfish desires and shake your soul force inside, which could look like many different things. I've had mystical states where I found myself vibrating on the inside, and sometimes where my body shakes. And so, as the Emerald Tablets can be interpreted in so many different ways, I would say whatever that meant to you, if you feel called to it, trust the process and explore as you see fit. But beyond that, if you may feel you are not ready or called for that yet, the lessons and the wisdom that we just received is still very, very valuable. Because nevertheless, when we strive for that inner calling, the inner light, the light of the truth that is the law working within you, by connecting and striving for that, you can break free of any problem, any restriction, any barrier, any challenge that you face, and you can live your purpose. In fact, it might be said that that is your purpose, because when you are in the fullness of the embodiment of spirit, your life is filled with ongoing bliss and joy. Even when things become challenging or tiring, it's still a blessing to be able to walk on the path, and it's one that you're grateful for. And I think that's something that many of us here in this community share and often feel. And so don't be afraid to point your toes, I love saying that lately, and dive into it. Whatever that thing is, like whatever the inner path that you're called to live looks like, both internally and externally, you have my and this community's support to make this happen. And in this sense, this is partially why we are here. And so we're going to actually carry this vibration into another holy book that really elaborates on this in another way. Because we must learn from the path of action. There are two paths, really, that we can take. One is the path of inner renunciation, and the other is the path of external action. Most people are stuck, though, in an external action that's ruled by selfish desires, by greed. We have the opportunity, each of us, to break ourselves free of that. And in our next text, Krishna is going to explain how to do that. And hello to everybody popping in. And Archangel Michael, looks like Lexi. Welcome. It's so good to have you and your energy in this space. If anything, as I'm reading, by the way, for anybody out there, if you feel called, if there's specific key lines or something that stands out to you that either facilitates a question or a comment, or you just want to call out that line, please don't be afraid to put that in the chat as it happens. Also, don't worry about it if you're just absorbed in the material. That is also very wise. A good place to be. Chapter 3 of the Bhagavad-Gita, Selfless Service. Arjuna, O Krishna, you have said that knowledge is greater than action. Why then do you ask me to wage this terrible war? Your advice seems inconsistent. Give me one path to follow to the supreme good. Krishna, at the beginning of time, I declared two paths for the pure heart. Jnana Yoga, the contemplative path of spiritual wisdom, and Karma Yoga, the active path of selfless service. One who shirks action does not attain freedom. No one can gain perfection by abstaining from work. Indeed, there is no one who rests for even an instant. All creatures are driven to action by their own nature. Those who abstain from action while allowing the mind to dwell on sensual pleasure cannot be called sincere spiritual aspirants, but they excel who control their senses through the mind, using them for selfless service. Fulfill all your duties. Action is better than inaction. Even to maintain your body, Arjuna, you are obliged to act. Selfish action imprisons the world. Act selflessly without any thought of personal profit. At the beginning, mankind and the obligation of selfless service were created together. Through selfless service, you will always be fruitful and find the fulfillment of your desires. This is the promise of the Creator. Honor and cherish the Devas as they honor and cherish you. Through this honor and love, you will attain the supreme good. All human desires are fulfilled by the Devas, who are pleased by selfless service. But anyone who enjoys the things given by the Devas without offering selfless acts in return is a thief. The spiritually minded who eat in the spirit of service are freed from all of their sins, but the selfish who prepare food for their own satisfaction eat sin. Living creatures are nourished by food, and food is nourished by rain. Rain itself is the water of life, which comes from selfless worship and service. Every selfless act, Arjuna, is born from Brahman, the eternal, infinite Godhead. Brahman is present in every act of service. All life turns on this law, O Arjuna. Those who violate it, indulging the senses for their own pleasure and ignoring the needs of others, have wasted their life. But those who realize the self are always satisfied. Having found the source of joy and fulfillment, they no longer seek happiness from the external world. They have nothing to gain or lose by any action. Neither people nor things can affect their security. Strive constantly to serve the welfare of the world. By devotion to selfless work, one attains the supreme goal of life. Do your work with the welfare of others always in mind. It was by such work that Janaka attained perfection. Others too have followed this path. What the outstanding person does, others will try to do. The standards such people create will be followed by the whole world. There is nothing in the three worlds for me to gain, Arjuna, nor is there anything I do not have. I continue to act, but I am not driven by any need of my own. If I ever refrained from continuous work, everyone would immediately follow my example. If I stopped working, I would be the cause of cosmic chaos, and finally of the destruction of this world and these people. The ignorant work for their own profit, Arjuna. The wise work for the welfare of the world, without thought for themselves. By abstaining from work, you will confuse the ignorant, who are engrossed in their actions. Perform all work carefully, guided by compassion. All actions are performed by the gunas of Prakriti. Deluded by identification with the ego, a person thinks, I am the doer. But the illumined man or woman understands the domain of the gunas and is not attached. Such people know that the gunas interact with each other. They do not claim to be the doer. Those who are deluded by the operation of the gunas become attached to the results of their action. Those who understand these truths should not unsettle the ignorant. Performing all action for my sake, completely absorbed in the self, and without expectations, fight, but stay free from the fever of the ego. Those who live in accordance with these divine laws, without complaining, firmly established in faith, are released from karma. Those who violate these laws, criticizing and complaining, are utterly deluded and are the cause of their own suffering. Even the wise act within the limitations of their own nature. Every creature is subject to Prakriti. What is the use of repression? The senses have been conditioned by attraction to the pleasant and aversion to the unpleasant. Do not be ruled by them. They are obstacles in your path. It is better to strive in one's own dharma than to succeed in the dharma of another. Nothing is ever lost in following one's own dharma, but competition in another's dharma breeds fear and insecurity. Arjuna asks, what is the force that binds us to selfish deeds, O Krishna? What power moves us even against our will, as if forcing us? Krishna says, it is selfish desire and anger arising from the guna of rajas. These are the appetites and evils which threaten a person in this life. Just as a fire is covered by smoke and a mirror is obscured by dust, just as the embryo rests deep within the womb, knowledge is hidden by selfish desire, hidden, Arjuna, by this unquenchable fire for self-satisfaction, the inveterate enemy of the wise. Selfish desire is found in the senses, mind and intellect, misleading them and burying the understanding in delusion. Fight with all your strength, Arjuna. Control your senses. Conquer your enemy, the destroyer of knowledge and realization. The senses are higher than the body, the mind higher than the senses. Above the mind is the intellect, and above the intellect is the Atman. Thus, knowing that which is supreme, let the Atman rule the ego. Use your mighty arms to slay the fierce enemy that is selfish desire. Now, there's a lot to unpack in here. Put it in the chat if that was completely clear, or if there were pieces along where it was like, what does that word mean? I kind of got lost here. I got thinking about this, I'm kind of feeling a few pieces might need some elaboration, which is a really exciting thing. The big thing for me when I first read this was, what is Prakriti? What are the gunas? I need to understand this in order to make sense of it. Having the understanding for people who already understand what those mean, it was very clear. And without that language, it might have been a little confusing. And so I'm going to take a moment to kind of go over some key parts here and elaborate. First is this: all human desires are fulfilled by the devas, who are pleased by selfless service. But anyone who enjoys the things given by the devas without offering selfless acts in return is a thief. The devas are essentially like gods. You can consider them as gods, but they're essentially all of the, like, from from the highest levels to the lowest levels of the of creation in the Hindu pantheon. All of them are devas, but the way that Krishna is explaining it is that the devas are the deities or forces at the closest level to the physical dimension, and kind of spanning up from there. And so when physical things move, there's a force behind it. There's an energy behind it. And at the highest levels of creation, you have Vishnu and you have Shiva and you have Brahma, these vast overarching Godhead deities that are kind of holding the container of all of creation and creating it actively through us. But then as you fractal down, there's like literally fractals of then thousands of devas. You see this in the Japanese, the Shinto tradition as well, where they'll have the god of the forest and the ocean and the rocks and and there's many different deities and little forest spirits, like in Princess Mononoke, or Spirited Away. And so all of those essentially are devas and ways for us understanding. So what Krishna is essentially saying is that there is an active relationship that's happening between the physical and the non-physical. And when things happen physically, there is a relationship there. And if you receive it without giving anything back, without any offering, or if it's taken by, it's done with a selfishness, then you are stealing from God. And so it's important to be mindful of the relationship in such a way that we are not alone in this, in all of creation, and there are many invisible forces available to us through our consciousness that we can connect with through the internal path. So this next part, all actions are performed by the gunas of Prakriti. So I love to re-elaborate on this. Prakriti is just the field, essentially, like everything in the illusion of reality that is not spirit, but that spirit is moving through, like the illusion of reality, the physical body, this cup of tea. It's all Prakriti. It's all the subject to, it's like energy that is constantly in flux and moving through time and space. The field of time and space itself. Whereas Purusha is the spirit, is another word for the self, or the eternal unchangeless that we are striving to center ourselves upon. But all actions are performed by the gunas. So the gunas are essentially three states of being that we and reality can exist in. They are sattva, which is a meditative state, rajas, the state of action, and tamas, which is like the heavy state of ignorance and sleep and kind of tiredness. The heaviness, essentially. It's interesting. It's like inertia. That's a good way of describing it. For most people, tamas is represented by ignorance and laziness, but like in the divine flow of creation, through sattva, through the meditative state, all of them essentially transform, and you transcend it. And this is what Krishna is explaining here. He says, those who are deluded by the operation of the gunas become attached to the results of their action. So when you're in, most people spend a lot of time in rajas, kind of spinning. I like to imagine it like a sphere, and the top part of the sphere is like a meditative enlightenment state, and then there's the middle part, and you're like spiraling around it, kind of like that, and then there's this heavy bottom energy that's pulling down tamas. People who spend a lot of time in rajas are driven by selfish desire, and I think it's fair to say that all of us here could take some time to self-reflect on which actions we often get sucked into that are selfish. When we do that and just take the time for that awareness, that's essentially going to sattva, especially if we do it in a meditative way, like in the relationship with the devas, and building you create, well, one is the creating the relationship there, but also then transforming the kinds of actions that we take so that our actions are divinely inspired rather than selfishly taken. And so this is why he says all actions are performed by the gunas, that it's in, and that that deluded by identification with the ego, a person thinks I am the doer. We are not the doer. The doer is the body. We are the spirit. We are the eternal, unchangeless awareness underneath it. But the spirit seems to be what actually experiences and feels. It's like we're wearing a suit, essentially, like this formless, eternal light wearing a suit of a body. And then that light is shared within each of us, just as Thoth described, but it's buried under a veil of the night. So Krishna is giving us instructions on how to be free. He also says it is better to strive in one's own dharma than to succeed in the dharma of another. This is part of the reason why our event today, this service, is called Live Your Purpose. Living your purpose is essentially living your dharma. Your dharma is the kind of the ongoing path of the soul that you're called to do at your highest level. When you're living your dharma, it's like you're living, you're doing, you're acting upon what spirit is guiding you to do. You're taking the actions, and that can be both on the small scale and the big one. If God at the biggest level, in your connection to your higher self says, I want you to take a 10-month pilgrimage around the world and go and live in ashrams and meditate. If that was your dharma and you felt that call, living your dharma would be taking the action. In a day-to-day sense, here's just the moment of it. Your dharma is spiritual advancement, and you know that one way you can do that is by taking a cold shower. And you hear the call to take a cold shower. Living your dharma would be having the courage to go and do that, even though sometimes it's scary. And I speak to that because I recently put a poll out on YouTube, and a lot of people were saying I'm really scared to try. But it really is an outstanding practice. So that's what it means it's better to strive in one's own dharma than to succeed in the dharma of another. Don't follow someone else's plan for you. Don't follow what someone else is doing. If you see someone else and you just want to be like them, do the thing that they're doing, but you know in your heart that's not where you're called to be. You have to make a choice. It's better to strive in your own dharma, to do that inner path. I see a question here, and actually those were some of the main key points that I wanted to speak to. So Michelle wrote, it might seem simple, but what is an example of selfless action? Well, this is what's really amazing, is through sattva, through the sattvic state, the meditative, contemplative, internal path, the actions transform, right? What that means is that as you go within deeper and deeper and embody the fullness of true unity, like knowing and perceiving unity in everything, with everyone, with every object, all of creation, perceiving and living in that unity, then the separation of selfish and selfless goes away. And there is only for the good of all coming through all of your actions. And so I think it's not about the specific thing. Like, what's a selfish action? From a physical perspective, you could say, oh, well, feed the hungry and be good to others, which are good answers, absolutely. And there's actually much wisdom in this and the Upanishads about how all of reality is like food, and that we should nourish those who are hungry, and in all of the ways. And wisdom is one of the highest ways of doing that, but also physically eat, people who don't have food. You could say that's a selfless action. However, if you're doing it for greedy reasons, because you're like, oh, I want to look good in the eyes of the Lord, so I'm going to go feed the hungry, and I'm doing it for my own ego's salvation, then it really doesn't matter. So the point really is then that we change the inner state to that place of unity. And then in living in that fully, we're able to bring that into all of our actions, and all of our actions become selfless. We tackle it at a higher level, and then all of the actions go, not go away. They all change. They all change, which is why we meditate and take cold showers. I have to change my screen settings every 15 minutes. The screensaver comes on. Thank you for the service. Thank you for being here, Mr. Adam. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And we're not quite done yet, I don't think. I mean, we could be. The 45-minute is a really good amount of time. It's really good. Speaking to action, though, I had some things. Oh, yes. No, we're not done. We have to do this. Okay. This is the most important part. Everything else is the build up to this. And I think it's actually something that needs to be addressed. Because in the last week, I've bore witness to 4 or 5 separate interactions. Many of them were in comments on YouTube. But I've had some outside of that as well. And I've had these interactions with people and perceived in the field this claiming of such advanced levels of spiritual wisdom and awareness, and yet just outstanding levels of anger and frustration with the world. And I see that and I go, I mean, surely surely if you were so advanced spiritually, you wouldn't be resonating at a consciousness level of 150 now, would you? And I say that with the most absolute love in my heart. But there is something here to be said about the nature of anger. And I understand it too, like with great humility. I know that there are people who, like, I've met many people in my life who also had, like, when it came to certain aspects of life or on certain spiritual path, or if everything was settled, like their consciousness, their awareness, they would see so much. They would be very vast, in their awareness. But then there's like a trigger of something physical that like drops them right back down to a very low state. And I myself have gone through that struggle as well, very much in my life. And so I do understand this at the same time, and I'm not meaning to poke fun or jest at people who are struggling this way. If anything, I want to support and help create some healing here. And so I'm called to speak on the nature of anger. Well, I'm going to read about it, but that was the bridge. That was the last bridge through our 3 books here. Was, if I can, I pulled out my, oh, no, here it is. I did pull out the bookmark, but God opened me to the right page. I wonder if I can find it again. There was one line that we read. Aha, here it is, about anger. And that was the part of the bridge. Krishna said, this is still in the last book, it is selfish desire and anger arising from the guna of rajas, action, that these are the appetites and evils which threaten a person in this life. So I want to take a moment to speak on anger, and the best words to do about that comes from the Dhammapada, which specifically has a chapter about anger. So we've gone from Thoth to Krishna to Buddha. That's fun. All right. 17. Anger. Give up anger. Give up conceit. Pass beyond every fetter. There is no suffering for one who possesses nothing, who doesn't cling to body and mind. The one who keeps anger in check as it arises, as one would a careening chariot, I call a charioteer. Others are merely rein holders. Conquer anger with non-anger. Conquer wickedness with goodness. Conquer stinginess with giving, and a liar with truth. If one speaks the truth, is not angry, and gives when asked, even when one has little, then one comes into the presence of the gods. Sages who do no harm, constantly restrained in body, go to the immovable state where they do not grieve. For the ever wakeful, training day and night, intent on nirvana, the toxins disappear. Ancient is this saying, O Atula. It is not just of today. They find fault in one sitting silently. They find fault in one speaking much. They find fault in one speaking moderately. No one in this world is not found at fault. No person can be found who has been, is, or will be only criticized or only praised. Who is worthy enough to find fault in one who is like a coin of the finest gold, blameless in conduct, intelligent, endowed with insight and virtue, praised by the wise after being observed day after day? Such a one is praised even by the gods, even by Brahma. Guard against anger erupting in your body. Be restrained with your body, letting go of bodily misconduct. Practice good conduct with your body. Guard against anger erupting in your speech. Be restrained with your speech, letting go of verbal misconduct. Practice good conduct with your speech. Guard against anger erupting in your mind. Be restrained with your mind, letting go of mental misconduct. Practice good conduct with your mind. The wise are restrained in body, restrained in speech. The wise are restrained in mind. They are fully restrained. Now, there's a few pieces here. Take a moment to consider what you just received. I'm going to pull up the etymology of the word restrained because it's very interesting. Or restrain, I suppose. Yes, okay. And then, just so that we're very thorough in this, because the word restrain might be difficult to comprehend what it means in a positive light, considering the thinking of binding, keep something under control, which is one of the modern definitions as well. To read the etymology, it says to stop, prevent, curb, stems from an old French to press, push together, curb or bandage, to draw tightly back, to tie back, confine, or check. There's also then keep in check or under control, and then other definitions that are less relevant as time kind of goes on. So if we consider restraining, just in the sense when we think, what does Buddha mean? The wise are restrained in body, restrained in speech, restrained in mind. They are fully restrained. This essentially means, if we think of that, the relationship between Purusha and Prakriti, right? The field is moving constantly, but then the soul is unmoving, eternal, changeless. Being restrained is essentially having your mind, your body in complete check and balance with that spirit, so that the reactions go away. Those moments of someone says something or something happens in the world, or there's a political something that goes on, or a pandemic, whatever it is, that causes us to react oftentimes without thinking. We just get upset, we get angry, we express our frustration, we have to vent. Imagine if your personal energy was so optimized that you never had to vent. That people would be like, hey, listen, I know that you're going through a lot right now. If you ever need to vent, and you're like, I'm very clear without needing to vent. It's like my energy is so optimized. I use 100%, and I don't have to have negative energy exhaust coming out of my mouth. This is what it means when he says, guard against anger erupting in your speech. Be restrained with your speech, letting go of verbal misconduct. Practice good conduct with your speech. Right? Every single word is sacred, so be very mindful about how you're using your words. Now, there was one other part that I wanted to speak to. Oh, well, let's kind of go through this and see what else comes up in our last few minutes here. The one who keeps anger in check as it arises, as one would a careening chariot, I call a charioteer. Others are merely rein holders. Such a good analogy. Such a good analogy. We could draw that. That would be very, like, I don't know if any words need to be said about it. It's just very it's almost as if you've got the chariot and you're the driver of it, and you've got your horses, and the horses are your emotions. And the horses have sometimes a mind of their own, and they're going to run off on their own and do whatever they want to if something scares them, or they feel like they're under attack or whatever. One who keeps their anger in check, one who is actually holding the reins, guiding the horses, guiding the emotions, rather than the other way around, letting them take you wherever they want to go. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Sages who do no harm, constantly restrained in body, go to the immovable state where they do not grieve. Go to the immovable state where you do not grieve. As we bring ourselves closer to the end of this service here, I'm just seeing the time and the chat, and it's all happening together. Maybe this is a note that we can all go out on together with. What did we learn today? Just going back and reflecting, we brought in the wisdom of Thoth, and he said to us that there really wasn't anything that we couldn't accomplish. We can become completely free. We are starborn, but in order to do it, we have to devote ourselves to the path of wisdom. Then we learned from Krishna, and he said that in order to really do all of that, you have to understand that actions are often tethered to rajas, one of the gunas, but in that there's a lot of selfishness and greed that often takes over. And so through selflessness, we can free ourselves of the guna of rajas and transform. This is also drawing some wisdom from another passage from him, but he says that all of the gunas can be transformed through sattva, through a meditative internal state, but it's also very important to be in a state of action and in a state of devotion in everything that we do, and in relationship with the gods, with the devas, with the energetic astral consciousness forces that are moving throughout all things all the time. And then we also looked at, well, how do we do that when there's also a lot of anger associated in rajas that keeps us tethered to lower states? And Buddha explained it very simply. So we must restrain our minds and our emotions, bring them in up to the closeness, a connected closeness with our souls, and then live from that place. And in this way, the anger goes away, the frustration, the pain goes away, and we step into something new and bright, really a transformed inner state. Yes?